What's up, everybody? It's Brian Jester, co-founder here at OccupyFantasy.com, and I'm here to show you our brand new Occupy model for the upcoming MLB season. Super excited to show you this tool. We've been working on it for a long time, and it's key to your daily fantasy baseball research. It's a tool that we use here at Occupy Fantasy to make all of our decisions, and a lot has gone into it. Baseball has a lot of data, a lot of research that you can do on a daily basis. To save time and to give you the best information possible, we created this model. All of your research is now condensed into this one dashboard. It's real time. It updates live. Everything you need to know about this day's slate, every single player, all the weather situations, all the betting odds is presented here in this dashboard. And with the premium membership at Occupy Fantasy, you can have access. And I want to show you how it works, everything that's gone into it, and really how to use it to become a profitable MLB DFS player this upcoming season. So let's jump right into it. This right here is our batter dashboard. We have 4 different tabs: batters, pitchers, stacks, and weather. And we'll get into each one of those individually. But as you see here with the batters, tons of information, a lot of different column names. First and foremost, we obviously have the player, his team, his opponent, and the time of the game they're playing in. OF index, we'll get back to this shortly. FanDuel, DraftKings information, of course, their salaries and the positions for each player. That's important when you're creating your lineups, obviously. Where we get the good stuff now, DK percentage and FD percentage. This is projected ownership. We talk about this in our ultimate guide, how important projected ownership is in determining which types of contests to play with your lineups. We'll update this a couple times per day. Every single player will have a projected ownership number, not just for FanDuel, but also for DraftKings. That way you'll know who the low-owned players will be, who the high-owned players will be. Every single player on the slate will have a projected ownership. Right next to that, we have order. This is the order, the batting order for each player, where they fit in their team's lineup. And early in the day, this will be a projected batting order, but as lineups actually come in, this number will be updated live to reflect their actual batting order. Now, Vegas odds. We love talking about betting odds and how they move throughout the course of the day here at Occupy Fantasy. So TT, that is team total. That is this player's team's implied team total based on the money line and the game total for that particular game. TT move, team total move. That is how much that team total has moved since that line opened. So looking here, and our first 2 guys, Nolan Arenado, Trevor Story, they play for the Rockies. They have a team total of 4.6. But their team total has dropped just a little bit, not a lot, about a 20th of a run. But we can see, and that's the best part about this model, all these columns are sortable. So we can take a look and see which team has seen the biggest decrease in their team total since the lines open. Looks like the Pittsburgh Pirates, nearly a quarter of a run drop. What about the other way around? Which teams have seen the biggest increase? The Chicago White Sox. We can look at all these factors and sort all of these columns to find the information that we're looking for. Let's go back and sort by OF index. Baseball, 2 key metrics. We talk about this in our daily fantasy baseball strategy guide that's up on the website now. ISO, isolated power, WOBA, weighted on base average. These are two key metrics, and you can sort, and these numbers are projected for that day's slate based on the opposing pitcher. So we look at Nolan Arenado, how he fares against opposing right-handed pitchers or left-handed pitchers, depending on who the pitcher is. Look at his history, look at the opposing pitcher's history, and come up with this number. So isolated power, this gives you guys to look for who hit home runs, doubles, and triples. Weighted on base average, guys who get on base but also hit for power. And once again, we can sort by these numbers as well. So we can see that Trevor Story has the highest projected isolated power for opening day. What about WOBA? I'm just curious to see who the number 1 guy is. Nolan Arenado. So look at these 2 Rockies' little mini stack for opening day. SB, that's stolen bases, number of projected stolen bases. When you're not looking for power, you're looking for guys who can swipe bags. That's another way to get fantasy points. We have projected stolen bases as well. And of course, this is generated based on the pitching and catching matchup for the opposing team. We've talked about it in the strategy guide, and we talked about it on Periscope last year. Weather and park factors are very important in determining a fantasy player's projections. WX, that is the percentage that we're increasing or decreasing a player's projection based on the weather. So Thomas Pham for the Cardinals, he's going to see a 15% drop in his projection on opening day due to the weather. And as we go up, and we'll see soon when we click on the weather tab, we'll see exactly why he's getting that drop. Park, that is the projection, the percentage that we're modifying his projection based on the ballpark he's playing in. So using historical factors, whether it's a pitcher's park or a hitter's park, we can also adjust his projection there. Now, when you're playing higher risk contests, or even if you're playing lower risk contests, you want to know how a player has been hitting the ball recently. And batting average and fantasy points, especially in a sport as volatile as baseball, don't tell the entire story. But with StatCast data, and once again, we talk about this in the strategy guide, StatCast data has become available in recent years, and there are tons of data. The two key metrics that we look at from StatCast are exit velocity, EV, and distance, DST. Now, EV is the average exit velocity, how hard a ball has been hit on batted balls, and this is a ranking. So this is not a miles per hour. You'll see in our Occupy model, it's the ranking. So for example, as we sort here by exit velocity or distance, and we scroll down, Aaron Judge over the last 15 days, and now this goes back to last season, obviously, because it's the first day, opening day. Aaron Judge had the hardest hit balls last year in the last 15 days of the season. He's also number 2 in batted ball distance. That's what DST is, batted ball distance. So now we can see that Aaron Judge has been hitting the ball pretty hard and pretty far recently. And regardless of how his fantasy totals have panned out, we know he's been making solid contact. He's a guy that we want to play in our lineups. So once again, we can sort all this data, and we can see if you see a guy that's highly rated and he has great StatCast data to back it up, he's probably in a pretty good spot. So let's go back to OF index. This is the number we talked about earlier. This takes all of the columns I just talked about and puts it into one easy to read number. It's one formula that incorporates all of these items: ISO, WOBA, stolen bases, weather, park effects, StatCast data, team totals, batting order, you name it. All that goes into one easy to read number so you can sort and see who the best players are overall for this entire day. It's incredible. The OF index sorts, and you can just go down and look at every single player for that slate and where they rank compared to their peers. Now, let's say you're filling out your lineup and you need to find a second baseman who fits under your salary cap. Or there are a bunch of situations where you may need to filter down. That's what all these filters here are at the top. So on FanDuel, I need to see who the best second basemen are today. So I'll click second base, and only the second baseman will be shown on FanDuel in the model. Maybe I need guys on DraftKings who are $3,500 or less. Who am I looking at? So I go down and I use the DraftKings price filter, and now only guys $3,500 or less will appear in the model. What if you're playing a late slate? Maybe you're playing a slate where, or the early slate, where you're only looking at the first 3 games, 110 and 1240. Well, look, now only the guys on that slate are appearing in the model. You don't have to worry about guys from the other slate. So use these filters to really pare down the players you're looking for and to help fill out your lineups. We talked about that weather tab earlier. Let's go back to it now. So if we click the weather tab, this shows all the reasons. So we're on the weather tab, all of the data for that weather for each game today. So let's go through it really quickly. So we got Chicago at Miami. You see the matchup. You see the time of the game. Here's important if you're playing pitchers, especially in cash games. Precipitation chance. What is the chance that it's going to rain that day? And this is for game time. It's not the entire day. It's what's the chance of it raining at the start of this game. So for example, Pittsburgh at Detroit, there's a 62% chance it rains starting at 1:10 p.m. Eastern. Temperature. The colder the weather, the harder it is to hit balls farther. So we show the temperature for each game, and then ADI. And if you go down to our key here, you'll see ADI is the air density index. Once again, we talked about this in our strategy guide. Air density index is a number that combines temperature, humidity, air pressure, and altitude to give you one number to see how easy it is for balls to fly through the air. The lower the ADI, the easier it is to hit home runs. And you'll see it in extreme like Colorado, where ADIs are in the 40s. And then you'll see games like today, where on opening day, ADIs are in the 70s. It's a little bit harder to hit the ball out of the park. And then, of course, wind. If wind is blowing out or blowing in, it can affect chances for home runs. So if the wind's a factor, we will tell you. For example, the Chicago-Miami game, the wind is blowing 16 miles an hour out. To center field, that'll give a bit of a bump to power hitters. Okay, great. All this data, how do we use it? That's what these final two columns are for. Weather for right-handed batters, weather for left-handed batters. If you don't want to look through the batters tab, you can look and see very simply here, all right-handed batters in the Chicago-Miami game will get a 1% bump to their total. Look at the flip side, Pittsburgh and Detroit. Very low temperatures, very high ADI, high precipitation chance. Right-handed batters and left-handed batters are getting an 18% decrease to their projections solely because of the weather. And now not a lot of people are doing this research on the day-to-day basis, but we incorporate all this into the model, and you can get that information very easily with just one click of the dashboard. Okay, so as we go back, let's click on pitchers. Just like we have batters, we have our own pitchers tab. Once again, each pitcher is sorted by OF index, takes all the factors into account. Projected ownership, of course, as we had batters. Now, pitchers are a little more reliant on Vegas odds than batters are. ML, that's the money line. That is the Vegas odds for a team's chance to win that game that they predict. And then we correlate that to a winning percentage. So, for example, Corey Kluber, the money line for the Indians is minus 164 on opening day. That gets him roughly a 62.3% chance of picking up the win, especially on FanDuel where wins are important. You can find out the pitchers that are most likely to secure that W. Just as we look at batters with line movement in their team totals, we're going to do the same with pitchers. How much has their money line moved over the course of the day? How has that changed their odds of winning? Once again, we can sort. James Shields somehow has seen the biggest line movement on opening day, 15 cents in his favor. So we can use this information to find out who bettors are betting and how the books are changing their original lines. Money line percentage, we kind of use this to see who the popular guys will be. This ML percentage is the percentage of bets that are coming in on that team. So, for example, opening day, 92% of the people at the one sports book are betting the Mets. So we know that the Mets will likely be popular. Syndergaard will likely be popular. And it's not surprising to see a 7-cent move on the money line because so many people are betting it. Where we get interesting moves is when we see, let's look at the other way around, where I see a team like Texas getting just 14% of the bets, yet the money line has moved in their favor. They've gone from plus 148 to plus 143. That always causes you to raise an eyebrow when you see not a lot of people are betting, but the line moves in the other direction. That's generally a sign that sharp action is on that team. And normally we want to get some type of exposure to that team if that's the case. Then we have opposing team total. Once again, if the team's not expected to score a lot of runs, that's good for that pitcher. And then as line moves throughout the day, we can also sort by opposing team total moves. Really simple here, same as the batters, but now we have a lot of Vegas information to work with when selecting the starting pitcher. After wins, what are the next most important things for pitchers? Strikeouts. Strikeouts are king in MLB DFS, and you can sort pitchers by their projected strikeouts per inning pitch. So Luis Severino on opening day is projected, along with Corey Kluber, to strike out the most batters per inning. Now, a pitcher may not go deep into the game, but when he's in the game, we can use this number to project strikeouts. And this uses a lot of data. It uses historical batter data, historical splits, the weather. All those numbers go into the projected strikeouts. And this is a really accurate number to help you select your pitchers. Just like batters, pitchers are affected by the weather. They're affected by ballparks. And they're also affected by how guys have been hitting the ball against them recently. So weather effect, park effect, they get the same bumps. And then we get to see distance and exit velocity against opponents against this pitcher over the last 15 days. So normally the last 2 or 3 starts for most pitchers. A higher number is better here for pitchers. Whereas we looked at Aaron Judge on the batters page, who was number 1 and number 2. You don't want high rankings in exit velocity and distance if you're a pitcher. That means you're getting hit really hard and you're getting hit really far. So we're looking for guys with really low numbers here. So, for example, Corey Kluber, the last 2 weeks of last season, 572 pitchers were hit harder than him last year. That's pretty damn good. So all this data, again, incorporated into the OF index. You're not worried about all that data and you just want one number to tell you which guys to pick. You're looking at OF index. Once again, we can filter DK salary, opponent, time. Anything you need to narrow down your selections, you can do it with the Occupy model. Okay, finally, we have one final dashboard, the stack dashboard. This is great if you're playing high risk contests and you're playing multiple lineups, or even if you're playing lower risk contests, I'm a proponent of this, of stacking teams in your lower risk contests. I know some people don't do that, but here's an option. This stack dashboard shows every single team on that day's slate, and it shows you how they rank in a variety of factors, whether it's OF index, isolated power, WOBA, or their team total. You can look and compare each team across all these metrics to see how they compare. So, for example, on opening day, Baltimore, their team has the highest rated stack according to OF index and isolated power. They're projected to hit some home runs on opening day. And you can look and you can sort, all right, who else is projected to hit just home runs? Maybe you're looking at upside only. You're looking at isolated power. You can look and see Baltimore, Kansas City, Minnesota. These three teams are projected to have the highest isolated power on opening day. Want to be a little bit safer? Want guys who also get on base? Maybe you're playing lower risk contests. You can sort by weighted on base average too. So the Pirates, 3.192 combined. Now this is a total number. It's not an average. It's a total number of all the players weighted on base average for that day. Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, Kansas City, all these teams projected to have high WOBAs on opening day. Where we really make comparisons, though, is how OF index, ISO, and WOBA compare against team total. Now, if a team has a high OF index, a very high team total, they're probably going to be popular, right? Very, very popular team. And you can play that team, in lower risk contests because ownership will be high and other guys will have them. Whereas if you're looking at a team that has a high isolated power but a low team total, they may not be as popular and you can find some edges in higher risk contests. So let's look here. Opening day, Houston, Baltimore, Kansas City, lead, and Pittsburgh. All these four teams have team totals over 5 on opening day, and you'll want some sort of exposure to these teams. Once again, team total move, another way you can see how team totals have moved throughout the day, throughout the stack dashboard. Now, what is RLM? If you're not familiar with betting, this may be a new term. That's reverse line movement. We talked about this with the pitchers. When we see a team getting less than 50% of the bets, but the line moves in their favor, they'll get a check mark right here. So, for instance, Detroit, opening day, getting less than 50% of the bets, but the money line has moved in their favor, they get the check mark. What this means is this is typically a sharp stack, right? So if you see a team that, let's look at Minnesota here. Minnesota is the second highest OF index, third highest ISO, and they have reverse line movement. This is a team we probably want to get exposure to on opening day based on all of our factors in our model. So that about does it for the Occupy model. I know there's a lot of data here. As always, you can hit us up with questions at Occupy Fantasy on Twitter. But really, I want to stress the importance of this tool. All your research is condensed. You can make all of your research in about 15 minutes for that day's slate. Compare players, compare stacks, compare pitchers, look at the weather. All this data is input into one dashboard, and I can't emphasize enough that it updates live. When a line changes, this model will change. When a batting order changes, this model will change. If the weather changes, this model will change. And once again, for the premium membership, as little as $4 a week, you can get access to the Occupy model and you get all of your research done in a short amount of time because, as we all know, we're all busy people, but we want to be profitable in MLB DFS, and we can do that at Occupy Fantasy thanks to the Occupy model.